Okay, I'd like to welcome everyone to the Metro Purple Line Corridor Management Committee meeting. I'm Victoria Reinhardt, Ramsey County Commissioner, and I am Vice Chair of the Corridor Management Committee. Chair Zelli is not available today, and so he has asked me to run the meeting today. We've got a lot on our agenda, so I think what we'll do is we will. I can't see the names of everyone, so let's see who's running that part of it so that we can call on people.
Maybe let's see, Liz Sun, do you have the list? Actually, I can go down through the list, Madam Chair.
Okay, just so we know who's on the call.
Yes, because we do have two new members, and maybe I'll jump to that slide. So for their benefit, everybody can introduce themselves, and then we'll have them introduce themselves to the group. So starting, Madam Chair, with yourself.
And I just introduced myself, so we're good.
Okay. Councilmember Lee.
I'm Councilmember Charlie Lee from the Met Council.
Councilmember Setterberg.
I just unmuted. My video is screwed up. Gail Cedarberg, District 11, Met Council.
Commissioner Zhang.
Everyone, Commissioner Mai Chang Zhang, representing District 6.
J-Lor.
Hi everyone, my name is J-Lor. I am the aide to Councilmember Yang representing Ward 6, St. Paul City Council.
Councilmember Villavicencio.
Good afternoon, everybody. Councilmember Villavicencio here from Maplewood, just pulling in on the bus.
Councilmember Walsh.
Hello, Bill Walsh, White Bear Lake.
And I still don't see anybody from Gem Lake yet. Also not seeing anybody from White Bear Township. Looking, let's see. And Matamita is not here either. So we'll go next to our CBAC co-chairs. Maybe start with Lori.
Good morning, or good afternoon, Lori Malone, Maplewood resident representative.
And Yanni.
Afternoon, Yanni Humus, business and resident rep.
And go to Nick.
Good afternoon, Nick Thompson from Metro Transit, alternate to our general manager, Leslie Kinderos.
And now I think we can go to our two new representatives. Both the primary and alternate for MnDOT has changed since our last meeting. So maybe I'll turn it over to Connie first.
Yes, good afternoon. My name is Connie Sahib Jam. I'm now back to MnDOT. I had this position about 20 years ago, and then I served for about 3-4 years as a deputy commissioner, chief engineer for MnDOT back around 2009, 10, 11, and served at in this capacity. Back then it was Central Corridor and maybe Southwest LRT, and so very happy to be back. And there's a few familiar faces, but many new ones. So I look forward to helping out from a DOT's point of view.
Welcome back.
Thank you, Commissioner.
And maybe go finally to Brad.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. Brad Larson with MnDOT Metro District, currently acting as the district's office director for planning, program management, and transit.
And Craig, did you introduce yourself?
Yes, and then other staff who you'll be hearing
Yes.
from today. So Craig Lamothe, I am the Purple Line project manager, and I'll figure out my camera here in a minute. Stephen.
Hi, I'm Stephen Smith. I'm the deputy project manager of Purple Line.
And Sara.
Sarah Pflaum, I am the engineering design manager for Purple Line.
And Liz Jones.
Everybody, Liz Jones, Outreach and Engagement Lead for Purple Line.
And Liz Sund.
Hi, everyone. Liz Sun, Administrative Lead.
And then I think we've got Mike. Mike Rogers.
Deputy Director of Public Works for Ramsey County for multimodal planning.
And Nat.
Nat Gorham, MnDOT Metro Transit Director.
And I think we got everybody. Did I miss anybody?
Okay. Well, thank you. I know I went a little already. I started out first time sharing this, and I skipped over one of the basics, and that is the housekeeping. So before we begin, there are a few things, obviously, that I think we're probably pretty used to all of these things with virtual meetings, but I'm going to go over them anyway. Please turn your camera on when you are speaking, and I was very impressed that people did that. Please mute yourself if you are not speaking. Indicate you would like to speak by raising your hand, and I think that Liz would, or someone is going to be able to tell me when that happens. Feel free to ask questions in the chat. The meeting is being recorded by the Met Council and will be available for viewing shortly after the meeting. Meeting agendas, summaries, and presentation materials are posted on the project website at metrotransit.org/purple-line-project-committees. Last week, a summary was sent of the last meeting, was distributed with the agenda for today's meeting. And I guess the first thing I'd like to ask, are there any suggested changes to the meeting summary? If not, let's see here. Okay, do I have to ask for a motion on this or not? Sorry.
You do not, Madam Chair.
Okay, so I will take the silence as meaning there are no changes to it. Then we will go to, I'm sorry, I'm really having trouble. We already did the new member introductions. And let's see, slide 4 is the overview of what we're going to be doing. You've already got it up there. Okay, as noted, we do have a lot of substantive things on the agenda for today. The Community and Business Advisory Committee report, community outreach and engagement, the items regarding action items is the Larpenteur Avenue Station, the location update on that one. North End District will get some updates on these, the route modification, tier 2 evaluation, and the conceptual engineering layouts and visualizations. And probably one of the most important parts is what are the next steps as we go forward. Then moving on to the, see here. I am sorry, I am really I think my notes and my and my agenda are not kind of lining up here. I'm not sure what.
Madam Chair, next up is the report of the Community and Business Advisory Committee from Yanni and Lori.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Yanni and Lori.
Yes, I can start with that. I'm just pulling up my notes here. So at our last meeting, we did a lot of outreach, or we did some outreach work, and we onboarded some new folks within the area of the Purple Line, and a couple people resigned. So we had Tori Gustafson as new member, Maplewood resident, Patrick Horan, another Maplewood resident, Nengshi Vang, St. Paul business, Alberto Bertamu, another St. Paul business along White Bear Avenue, Felicia Anderson, St. Paul resident, Leah Gale, St. Paul resident, and then 3 resignations, Regina Ripple, Tong Thao, and Dale Grambush. And our we had Larpenteur Station move to Idaho to onboard or give more access to um, current residents and new build out that is going on at the Hafner site. And let's see, that is about the gist of our meeting. Oh, and ridership for the Purple Line is going to compare to the Route 54, and I think we discussed that in a previous meeting here. And any questions?
Any questions from the members? Okay, then, well, thank you for your report. And before we move on, well, again, asking about any questions or comments. And I apologize, I had my slides in the wrong order here, and so I was trying to figure out where we were going. Okay, and then we have the community outreach and engagement update. And Liz, I believe that you're taking that one.
Yes, thank you, Commissioner. And hi, everybody. Again, Liz Jones, Outreach and Engagement Lead. I will just give a brief summary of what we've been up to and what we have planned upcoming for Purple Line engagement. So really quickly here, I just wanted to point out that we do have a pretty large summary report on outreach and engagement activities that we've previously reported on in these meetings. So really the kickoff of our White Bear Avenue in Maryland corridor engagement, when we were out doing a lot of canvassing, pop-ups, we started to have open houses to hone in on station locations. And so really we're out in the community a lot. Talked to probably even more than 900 folks, but this report, and the link is in the slide deck, also it lives on our website, really shows all of our everything that we did, all of our methods that we used to connect with folks, feedback and common themes and key takeaways. Also, there's a comprehensive appendix of showing all of our materials, handouts, door hangers, our translated materials, boards. So I would encourage all of you to take a look at that, and just wanted to let you know that we have that summary ready. And as future summaries come up this year, we'll share that information out with you as well. Go to the next slide, please. At our last CMC meeting, we were just getting started with our corridor walk and roll events. So the intention, as a reminder of these, are really just to get out on the corridor and walk and roll with folks for different segments of Maryland and White Bear Avenue. So we kind of chunked out 5 different segments of the corridor to about mile distances each, met folks out on site, and really just wanted to get any questions, comments, feedback on the existing conditions of the corridor as we are doing this analysis and figuring out station locations and what Purple Line on Maryland and White Bear Avenues might look like. We talked to about 50 plus folks at these events. We had a variety of folks who were new to the project, folks who've been following the project a lot of good people who live, work, or own businesses in the corridor. So it was really great to be out there and connect with folks. We had a lot of comments, questions with a variety of topics about kind of overall project questions. We talked a lot about what is BRT and station amenities, discussed the importance of reliable buses. And that's a theme that continued to come up in our station location engagement that we've reported on before, and that folks really prefer dependability and reliability over frequency of stops and stations. There were some questions on our environmental process and nature impacts, a lot of safety and accessibility questions and comments, and really this has been a pretty big theme throughout our engagement, is a lot of mention that the existing conditions on Maryland and White Bear Avenue, folks perceive that as unsafe and not pedestrian and mobility device friendly. So there's a lot of conversation on folks' existing experiences, crossing certain intersections, roadways where folks are going to traveling throughout the corridor, and how Purple Line might enhance that experience. while improving transit on the corridor. So it's definitely great to get out and connect with folks, and definitely something we want to continue to use throughout the life of the project is really meeting with folks right on the corridor and seeing what's live in front of us and chatting with folks. So just wanted to give that quick update. We've also been focusing on, and I'll go into a little more detail on these first 2 bullet points. And Sara, our design manager, will get into the design, and I'll talk a little bit about engagement regarding the Larpenteur Avenue station and the North End routing station with St. John's. But also wanted to mention, and Yanni touched on this earlier, that we spent a lot of time recruiting folks who represent the Maryland and White Bear Avenue corridor now that we're looking at this area to serve on our Community and Business Advisory Committee. So we're able to add 6 additional folks. We are still have a few spots open. We did receive another application recently for a resident. We're definitely interested in more folks who are kind of north of Larpenteur and the Beam Avenue area for Maplewood businesses. If folks know anybody, please send those our way. But we are still recruiting to make sure that we have representation from the corridor that we're looking at. And once the project does confirm a new LPA, new Purple Line route at the end of the year, we'll do kind of a formal resetting of the CBAC because we do have folks still engaged in the committee from the original LPA. We are still doing pop-ups and meetings out in the corridor as well. So we've done a few engagements with apartment complexes. We have regular standing pop-ups at Ramsey County Service Center, both downtown St. Paul and the pop-up in the Maplewood Mall, and continue to meet with community groups and organizations like Friends of the Parks and Trails of St. Paul and Ramsey County. Just wanted to mention a couple of those. The next slide, please. This is just a broader view of some of our recent events and meetings since our last CMC meeting. A few of these highlights, again, multifamily housing apartment complexes, some schools. We'll get into some of these further with our conversation about the Larpenteur Avenue station, meeting with developers, city councils, district community councils. We just had a good meeting with the new owners and managers of Maplewood Mall. So we're continuously out talking with folks in the White Bear Avenue, Maryland corridor, and all folk communities related to the entire Purple Line as well. These are a snapshot of what's coming up. We are meeting with the St. Paul Planning Commission's Transportation Committee, which is members of the public. Our Purple Line partners run through Ramsey County that has a lot of businesses from throughout the corridor. We're continuing to engage with the White Bear Avenue Business Association and the District 2 Neighborhood Council, our kind of core groups for Maryland and White Bear Avenue engagement. We are also planning to engage property owners, residents, businesses further along the White Bear Avenue alignment who may have larger potential impacts with implementing bus lanes on Maryland and White Bear Avenue, and talk a little bit more about that on the next slide. But that effort will really be this month, later this month through March, once we have our broader comment period. So we've gone through with the design team, we've had a lot of meetings and really calling out some potential larger impacts. So parking impacts to businesses, everything from maybe retaining wall impacts, who might be impacted with access changes, turns. So those are things we are still looking at and planning to talk further with city staff and policymakers before we would go out and actually talk to these folks. But really want to make sure that we get ahead of our broad engagement this spring so that folks are aware of what these larger potential impacts with this corridor might be. And so we'll be, again, completing that effort before this comment period coming up in the March and April timeframe. This is really a large effort to solicit feedback and preference on all of our layout options for the White Bear Avenue corridor. and what the actual bus lane configurations on Maryland or Whitebear Avenue will look like. So we really will have the details that folks have been waiting for. Again, information on different impacts and what the design will look like. So that we're looking forward to that effort this spring. And then there'll be a little bit of time in between that, but not much, before we hit heavy again on another engagement period. This will be the comparison of the Whitebear Avenue corridor and the Bruce Vento Trail corridor. So just wanted to let you all know that those are what is upcoming for engagement. Included in both of those engagements are similar activities that we typically utilize to reach as many folks as possible. So we will be hosting our own project community meetings. We hold a number of individual meetings with individual stakeholders and community neighborhood business groups. We try to attend as many existing community events as we can, as well as holding pop-ups and community spaces. We are also looking at implementing more of a workshop format for small groups, probably something we'll do with our Community and Business Advisory Committee and potentially other engaged groups like the District 2 Community Council or Whitebear Avenue Business Association, but something a little bit different and a little bit more hands-on. Again, mentioned informing key folks about potential property impacts. We talk with a lot of folks with canvassing and door knocking, flyering, and then we'll also include a diverse and ethnic media push so that we can really get the word out further for these upcoming engagement opportunities.
Okay, well, as you can see, there's been a lot of activity and even more to come. I have been very impressed with not only the fact that there have been, I think actually what you've laid out here is kind of it's not everything that you have been doing, but it kind of touches on the highlights of it. I agree that I think there's many more than 900 actually that have been involved in this. It seems like there's great, the events are great, but letting people know about the events is obviously very important. And the staff, everyone has done just a fantastic job. And the partners that are on this line or on this call right now have really tried to make sure that people know that there's opportunity and really listening and taking it all into account as we're trying to move forward with this. Are there any other questions? Because this was a lot of information, because it's been a lot of activity and it will continue to be. But I just would like to see if there are any other particular questions that anyone has about any of these events or what is upcoming, the timeline, anything that you might have, any questions. Okay, we're kind of a quiet group today. All right. Well, then, and obviously, as we go through the meeting, if there's something that comes to mind, you can always ask. The next item is the Larpenteur Avenue Station location update, and there is an action that is being requested here as we go through this. And so if you, again, as we're going through it, if you have questions, please ask, and we'll try to make sure that we get everything that people have. And this is also something that has been discussed in the outreach and the community engagement. So I will turn it over first to Sara. Is that correct?
Yes. Just can everyone hear me okay? I heard that when I did the introduction.
We can't hear you very well.
Oh, let me try a different microphone. Is this better?
Yes.
Okay.
Very much.
Good. I'm having headset problems, so trying to figure out other microphones. So you may recognize this slide. We showed the proposed stations a few CMCs ago, but the proposed stations along Maryland and Whitebear are similar to the Route 54 with roughly half-mile spacing, so that all the entire corridor is, hopefully about a 5-minute walk from a transit station for the Purple Line. You can go to the next slide. And as we have been diving a little deeper into the design and engagement, some things have come up about this Larpenteur Avenue station. This station is currently on the border of St. Paul and Maplewood. It's kind of a central node, you know, for the two cities right there. There's a lot of potential for redevelopment. And the existing Route 54 stops at this intersection. So that was kind of our default starting point for the station location. And then, as we started with the engagement, and Liz will talk about this more on the next slide, we began hearing from people that that we may want to shift the station just a little bit. You can go ahead, Liz.
All right, thank you. I'll jump in here. So like we mentioned previously in our station location engagement, the Larpenteur station is the one station that really we heard a lot of comments on and interest in shifting the station to the south to better serve the Iowa high-rise, multifamily housing, a lot of older folks with various cognitive and physical disabilities. Also near the vacant Hafner site, which is the future Gloryville development. So we heard these from folks who don't necessarily live at the complex or work with the development. So we wanted to do further engagement with both of those entities. So we had a few events and pop-up events at the Iowa High Rise, and really learned that there are a lot of folks who utilize transit, a lot of folks who utilize Metro Mobility as well, but we're interested in using transit if there were a more efficient and reliable transit service. So we're certainly in favor of a Purple Line and improvements for pedestrian and mobility device accessibility around the high rise. We also did learn that folks, pedestrians and folks with mobility devices do easily more access the high rise through Idaho to travel throughout the neighborhood there. So that was good information to learn. Also talked to folks who work with the Gloryville development, learned a little bit more about what they were planning. Going to be mixed use affordable housing with a grocery store and other retail. They were also really supportive of having transit connections and having Purple Line be closer to the future development. When we met with them, we did also talk a little bit about other local routes that would remain on the corridor as Purple Line primarily replacing the Route 54, but the Route 64 is planned to remain. And so we're connecting the Gloryville folks who right now there's a 64 stop pretty much right in front of this site. And they're interested in potentially incorporating a Route 64 station into their development. So we are connecting them with our internal service development folks as well. So both really good support and advocacy for shifting the station like we heard from others in the community.
So this map kind of shows that that shift a little bit better. Larpenteur is at the top of the map. Idaho is 2 blocks south. You can see that it's right. It would be right next to that Hillcrest Center that that the city has identified as, you know, potential for redevelopment. It's right next to that Iowa high rise and a block from that Gloryville development. And when we started looking more into the design side and the data, the Idaho station would really be closer to a little bit more density and multi-family units. It is really the center of the St. Paul neighborhood node. And when we looked at existing pedestrian activity in that area and bus boarding and exiting, it's heavily, it's heavily south of the intersection, and not so much north, where our station would be if we were at Larpenteur. So, so some of the data kind of backs up this move or potential move to Idaho. Then we looked at the walk sheds of the two. We kind of wanted to see, you know, if we move 2 blocks south, then who are we leaving out? So, so in the map on the right, the blue kind of shows where the walk sheds of the 2 locations overlap, stations at Larpenteur and at Idaho, where that overlap would be. The red in this one shows what we would lose, and you can see on the left side, it's mostly wetland area that we would lose. On the right, I think it's single family housing. And then what we gain by moving it south to Idaho is in the green on the sides there. And there's more housing and more dense housing that we pick up than what we lose in the red. So,
looks like Councilmember Lee has a question if we want to pause for a second.
Go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. My quick question was, when the city says that the Hillcrest Center is possibly open for development, is that does the city already have plans, or does the current owner trying to reach out and sell the site, or do they have plans?
No, there aren't any plans right now. I think it's just that the city is identifying it as a site that maybe isn't in its highest and best use right now. And so, you know, with the right prompts, potentially like having a bus rapid transit station nearby, you know, potentially it's a good site for redevelopment in the future.
Oh, thank you.
I can see that that makes sense given what is happening there right now with Gloryville and other work that's being done, and it's, I think, the natural progression of things.
Yeah, it's part of these projects is to kind of look at what could be developed around the stations, what could be more dense, what could be like a better use of different properties and stuff. So that's one of the things that we look at a little bit as we're planning these projects. So so what we're bringing to you today is just a concurrence action that the CMC concurs with project staff recommendation to shift the Larpenteur Avenue station to Idaho Avenue for purposes of further technical evaluation and community engagement. Of course, we also include this note that we're not fully finalizing station locations until the preferred roadway and transit design concept is finalized. And we think that that will be in May. But this is where we are right now. So I'll turn it back over for questions.
Okay, thank you. Well, you can see the requested action before you. And as noted, this is something that there'll be more coming, and the final transit design concept is anticipated in May of this year. I would like to point out that I really think that when you think of all the community engagement and the different things that have been taking place, this is the very type of thing that you can put something down on paper, but when you start talking to people about it, they go, but did you think of? Did you think of? And going back and forth and trying to come up with what really makes the most sense. And so I think there's a lot of work that's gone into this, a lot of community input. and staff really listening and bringing back and trying to figure out, okay, what does make sense and what do we lose, what do we gain? And so as both Liz and Sarah were talking here, I think it's pretty clear that this has been vetted and has, at this point is here for our concurrence. So I would, to get the discussion going and then we can ask questions, I would ask for a motion that the CMC concurs with project staff recommendation to shift the Larpenteur Avenue station to Idaho Avenue for purposes of further technical evaluation and community engagement. Is there a motion?
So
Motion.
Move.
Okay, who made the motion?
I did.
Commissioner Zhang?
Mhm.
And the second was?
I think it was Yanni.
Yanni.
Okay.
Yep.
I know I heard a male voice, so okay. Now, any discussion, questions, comments?
I think we did get a question in the chat from Councilmember Villavicencio. And Liz, I don't know, put you on the spot. If you can recall, I know I went out for an open house with the project team to the the Iowa high rise, but I think we also sent Colin Owens, our community outreach coordinator, out several other times to engage folks. I don't have the dates specifically. I don't know if you've got rough time frames. My memory's a little foggy, Liz.
Yep, thanks, Craig. Thanks, Councilmember Villavicencio, for the question. I attempted to hurry and get an answer in the chat, and I misspelled a lot of things in that chat. But we did talk to them. We went to visited their resident council meeting. We did a few pop-ups in their community room, and then ahead of time to promote that we would be talking to folks, did canvassing and leave flyers in all of the individual apartment complexes under their doors, the door hangers. And so those were in like the October, November timeframe.
Okay.
Yeah, I raised my hand. Yeah, I know I was there in
Yanni?
September with Colin as well for an event.
I think that one was the initial resident council meeting. Yep. Thanks, Yanni.
Okay, are there any other, did that answer your question, Nikki?
Yes, that part answered my question, but can you just reiterate maybe like the main reason why the shift from Larpenteur to Idaho? I guess I'm just not really clear on what the reason was or is.
I can
So
grab that.
Okay, Craig, go ahead.
No, I'd say I'd boil it down to that this was flagged for our attention by feedback we got from multiple different stakeholders. As we started looking at it from a technical standpoint, some of the information that Sarah shared, it did show that our current transit stops, not just the 54 stops, but the local route stops in that segment area, the folks that are boarding those buses are predominantly going from those stops to the south. Including the stop at Larpenteur. Most folks seem to be moving south from that stop or going to the stop from the south. And so that seemed to be where the critical mass was versus north of Larpenteur. And then these opportunities, it was identified that the Iowa high rise had high ridership and level of interest. And then the fact that we won't have a surface parking lot that's been there for a decade and a half here. I believe they start construction in 2025 for the Gloryville development, and will be done about the time that we start construction on White Bear Avenue, as well as the Hillcrest. So there was a critical mass of things there that would want to be served. Those were the main reasons.
Any further questions from Nikki or anyone else? I just think that you've done a very fine job on this, and it makes sense. And I'm really pleased that with the amount of work and effort that's gone into this. And I think it's very clear that staff and all of the community members, the advisory board, are all working in concert here to make sure that we can get the best project station by station, because that's what it takes. Okay, I can't see any other hands up. That doesn't mean there aren't any. Okay, are we ready to vote? Okay, we have a motion and a second for the action that's listed on the screen here. Hearing no further discussion, I am, Craig, you're gonna have to help me out here. Can I just do ayes or do we need to do a?
You can just do a voice vote.
Okay. Okay, all those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed say nay. Hearing no nays, it passed unanimously. Good work, really good work. Okay, moving on then to the North End, I believe is next. North End District, Segment 5, the routing and station options update. And Sarah or Liz, whoever wants to go first.
Sure, I'll start. Those of you that were with us with the route modification phase 1 might recognize this type of spaghetti noodle drawing is what we called it then. But as you all may remember, we with shifting the alignment potentially to White Bear Ave, it is a little bit more difficult to serve St. John's Hospital. So we had to take some time to try and figure out how we could do that in the best, most efficient way. So these different colored lines represent all of the different options that we looked at. And we got pretty creative with some of them. And of course, the project team looked at these along with our city staff partners. We did a lot of talking to St. John's Hospital staff and Metro Transit to kind of figure out and whittle down the best 2 options. And on the next slide, you can see the first of those. This option would have the purple line stay on Beam Avenue at the Maplewood Mall Transit Center, and then have a new station there, and then continue on to Hazelwood, and stop at St. John's Boulevard at the original LPA version stops at St. John's Boulevard and Hazelwood. Those have always been the location that St. John's has preferred for our station to serve them. And then the bus would continue on Hazelwood up to some existing public property just north of County Road D and lay over there. And so we would have to build a layover area, and since it's the end of a line and a layover area, it's Metro Transit's policy to allow boarding. So we would also have a platform and a station there to allow people on the bus as it then would head south again after it lays over. And then next slide. The other option that is advancing is just ending the purple line at the Maplewood Mall Transit Center when it reaches the transit center, and then having local service meet the purple line buses and then take St. John's customers, employees, etc., via local bus over that last 2. It's only 2 blocks, but it's 2 suburban blocks. They're very long, so that last, roughly half a mile. And then, if that were the option, Metro Transit would commit to having local service meet essentially every other Purple Line bus. So it would be, up to 30-minute service This is the shortest routing of the Purple Line. It has the fewest platforms. There were a lot of reasons that that got us to this point. But those are the two options that we are moving forward to study more in depth. And Liz will talk about some of the engagement in a little bit, but first I think we have a little bit more in-depth drawings to show. In this first line, you'll see kind of the existing conditions out there on Beam Avenue, just some pics from Google Street View. You can see Beam is a 4-lane divided roadway in the existing condition. And then the next line kind of shows what the cross section would be with our different options. And then the following line is a plan view of that. So so with the end point of Maplewood Mall, we would be in mixed traffic on Beam Avenue. It's a block from White Bear Ave to the transit center. So we don't see for that distance much of a transit benefit in trying to build separated bus lanes. So that is what that first column is showing is for the Maplewood Mall endpoint, we essentially would not do anything to the roadway. We would have to build a new platform in the Maplewood Mall Transit Center and kind of move some of the existing gates there, do some improvements, but we would not build anything on Beam Avenue. If we were to continue to a new layover facility at Hazelwood and County Road D, we would make some updates to Beam Avenue. We would either do bus and right turning vehicle lanes on the side, and that would take 1 lane of general purpose traffic in each direction and convert that to buses and right turning vehicles. And that is what we have represented in that purple column. And then the other option would be to potentially take the northbound lanes of Beam Avenue and turn that into a transit-only guideway, and then convert everything south of the existing median to be a 3-lane roadway with 1 lane in each direction and a center turn lane. That is what we have shown in the yellow here. So those are the 3 things that we are looking at for kind of the end of the line. And then this is a bigger plan view of that, of some of that too. This is right at the Maplewood Mall Transit Center at Beam and South Lawn. And this just kind of shows the only changes we would really be making would be some improvements to the signals here and reconfiguring some of the gates in the transit center. And then this is a plan view of where the stations would be that we'd be studying if we were to continue to St. John's and we were going to be in a side running configuration with the bus lanes on the side. This is in yellow. The yellow square is showing where our bus platform would go. the bus would stay on Beam Avenue to be more efficient. It would not turn into the Maplewood Mall Transit Center. And then the last option is if we converted that to a transit only roadway north of the median. And that would, and this would only happen also if we were going to serve St. John's directly. And this would make it a little bit better for transit users and pedestrians. They wouldn't have to cross any general traffic. They would only have to cross the bus lanes to make their connections in the transit center. So this is probably the most impactful as far as construction goes, but it is the option also that serves transit users the best. And so these are the three options that we are looking at. And then Liz is going to talk a little bit more here now about some of the engagement that we did with St. John's, especially.
Thanks, Sarah. Yep, I just wanted to chat briefly. Obviously, talking to St. John's about this routing is super important. So we did have talked to St. John's a lot about everything that Sarah just walked us through. Really from the St. John's, M Health Fairview, we met with leadership staff, and then we did also receive zip code data for their employees and patients where folks are traveling from. And then we also did request of St. John's to implement a survey of their employees, which they were very gracious in letting us do that as well. I would say key takeaways from our meeting with St. John's leadership staff is that they were really preferring 30-minute service. They felt that was adequate enough to serve St. John's. And something really interesting that we found out is that the hospital works with Century College on sponsoring students and has coursework on site for various medical fields at the hospital. And so they have had challenges with transportation for students to and from the college and the hospital. So they would be really interested in that connection as well. Like I mentioned, we did do a survey of St. John's employees and didn't have a lot of transit users take the survey. Minimal transit use, not a lot of folks utilize transit as a primary commute mode. And you can see some of the demographics to the right. We had 135 folks respond to the survey. So there's definitely a lot more folks who work at St. John's than who took the survey. But again, we did appreciate the opportunity of folks who did fill this out. A lot of folks were women, 25 to 54, did not list disabilities. And most of the folks did relate that they have access to a vehicle and drive alone. And we did get a little bit of information about different shift times, but most of the folks who completed this survey work 6 a.m. to 2 p.m. shift 3 to 4 days a week. The next slide breaks down the results a little bit more. Like I mentioned, you can see that there's not a lot of transit users. We did ask about pre versus post-COVID transit use. So even pre-COVID, not a lot of folks utilizing transit, even less post-COVID. And I will add that there's challenging with this question is there's not direct service to St. John's. There hasn't been consistent direct service for a while, and it was, I think, 90-minute service. So they haven't had really great direct transit access. But there were some comments and other questions that we asked. So we asked about what would be your top factors influencing your mode choice. Fastest, most convenient were the top two, and then safest came in as well. So there were a lot of comments on how could transit service improve to St. John's, and there were just a lot of comments that there's not direct service to St. John's, and folks need stations and stops where they're traveling to and coming from to be able to actually utilize it to get to St. John's, that there's existing no or limited options, especially with rapid transit to reduce commute times. Folks also don't want to have to travel long distances by walking or rolling from the bus stops to St. John's location. So not a lot of transit users like we were potentially hoping, but I also think not surprising given that there not currently and hasn't been really good connected, efficient transit service to St. John's. And this slide here.
I would just like to comment on that because that is a really critical piece of information. If you haven't had any options, to then ask you, well, have you used transit? Well, if there aren't options, you're not going to get that. And even if there was, like minimal, if you have, once or twice a day coming from some of the different locations and on the routes that exist today, that still isn't an indication of would you use transit if it was every 15 minutes, every 30 minutes, and more reliable and getting you to the places that you needed to be. So I appreciate the information, but I do want to make sure that we put it into perspective. If you haven't had the option, it's hard to say, well, yeah, I've used it, but because it's so minimal, it would be very difficult for folks. Sorry, go ahead.
No, absolutely. It's a really important point to make and try. I think it, alludes to that with all the other comments from the other questions that we asked, but that's really important. Also, I'll just note that in our other engagements with residents throughout the corridor, we did get a number of comments from folks who are interested in taking transit to St. John's. So I would say a lot of interest from the patient side that we've heard. And this map right here, and the survey that we conducted was just of St. John's employees. We were not able to survey their patients, but we were able to receive zip code data from both employees and patients. So the image on the left are St. John's employees. You can see the darker colors are higher numbers, more concentration of folks. And on the right-hand side are patients. So definitely a lot more patients coming from Purple Line Corridor. You can see in both kind of Ramsey and even into Washington County as well. A lot of folks in Purple Line Corridor and beyond who travel to St. John's to receive care.
And I noticed that Commissioner Zhang did have a question in the chat about it being from staff or clients and patients only. So I think that this slide answers that question. If it doesn't, please speak up.
Yes, Madam Chair, Commissioner Zhang, I believe the survey was sent to their employee base of their hospital campus, so all the buildings, and that approximated about 2,800 employees that the survey was sent to.
Thank you. Okay. I think that, are there other questions on this North End District, segment 5? Okay, before we move on to the route modification study tier 2, I do want to go back. There was a question from Councilmember Villavicencio that talked, well, it wasn't a question, but an objection because she had wanted to go along to the Idaho building. Liz Jones did respond to that, and we'll make sure that if you want to, make sure that it won't happen again. And so the apology is extended from all of us. On the other part of the question that she brought up was whether or not the motion that we took, and I did a voice vote, if that should be roll call. And I agree, because it's very difficult. I think that it should be a roll call vote, only because in virtual, you don't know if people thought they voted and were on mute or whatever. I think it's important that we do a roll call vote. So I hope that you will indulge me as we go back. And I can't tell. I'm finally having some of the technical issues dealt with on my desktop here. But as far as the voting members, if we could just go back to that. And we already have the motion in a second, and I'm just going to retake the vote. And Craig, oh, good, you've got a list. Okay, if you could do a roll call. And again, this is the action that is on the screen right now.
All right, Madam Chair, I'll go through the list of members since I think we have at least one primary and alternate, and there can only be one vote, and we'll defer to the primary on that one. Liz Sund, if you could keep note as I rattle through the list and we hear from each member.
Yes.
Madam Chair.
Aye.
Councilmember Lee.
Aye.
Commissioner Zhang.
Aye.
Jaylor.
Sorry to break out of habit, but I don't believe I have voting powers for the council member.
As the designated alternate, you do end up having, at least within the jurisdiction of the CMC, I don't know if there's something we need to consider for City of St. Paul, but you have been officially designated as the alternate.
Thank you. Aye.
Councilmember Villavicencio.
We couldn't.
Oh, sorry. It took a minute for my phone to get unmuted. Aye.
Oh, thank you.
Councilmember Walsh.
Aye.
Lori.
Aye.
Yanni.
Aye.
Nick.
Aye.
Connie.
Aye.
That's the list.
Okay, the ayes have it and it has passed. And I thank you again, Nikki, for bringing that up because we want to make sure as we're going forward that we do it appropriately. And so when we have votes in a virtual meeting, we will be taking them by roll call. So thanks again. Okay, let's move on then to the route modification study tier 2 evaluation overview. And that is Stephen Smith.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to just say that I will try to go through this fairly quickly. I want to leave time to be able to go through some of the fun visualizations that we have coming up next. And a lot of this evaluation criteria you will hear more about in a future CMC too as well. So I'm just going to provide a brief overview of the evaluation criteria that you will end up seeing at a future CMC. Previously, we utilized technical themes to narrow down options during tier 1 screening process at a high level. So a lot of themes that you're looking at right now, we utilize to get down to the 4 options that we're talking about today. Now with the row plots being developed, each of the for each of the 4 options, we can conduct a more detailed evaluation. I will note too that when I say row plots, I'm not talking about at a 15% design level. They're much less than that, but it gives us enough detail to be able to conduct this evaluation. There are 3 new criteria themes that we didn't bring forward when we were talking about how to narrow down to the 4 options, which are cost, ridership, and then CIG program that we're introducing now. So when I say CIG program, I mean the viability of the route. You can go to the next slide. So our plan is to present the technical analysis to the public in March. More details was discussed earlier by Liz in the presentation, but the public engagement period is expected to last about approximately 30 days. We intend to present all the technical analysis. So all the things that you're seeing now, we plan to bring to the public for public feedback. And then in the coming months, we will end up bringing all that information to a CMC, including talking about federal viability to the CMC members. Go to the next slide. So here you can see that, staff has diligently worked on technical analysis, coordinating with city staff from St. Paul to Maplewood, as well as county staff at our IRTs that we talk about, where we talk through the road plots and the different issues. It's our issue resolution team meetings, and they happen on a weekly basis. Discussions or decisions such as shifting the Larpenteur location to the Idaho has been influenced by engagement efforts. Various pieces are coming together. Some analysis like environmental and pedestrian access. These are things that have been discussed with the stakeholders at the IRT already, while others are still being finalized. As you can see, discussions, certain discussions are going to end up continuing through January and February. With ridership and costs, I can see that being able, persisting through a little bit into March. But public engagement with the technical analysis is anticipated to commence in March. So kind of just reiterating that we're going to have a lot of this stuff wrapped up and be able to present that, all the different technical details to the public in March. You can go to the next slide. Next, I like to review technical themes. It's anticipated that not all the criteria, all the technical themes that I was just talking about will act as differentiators between the 4 options. Some criteria are essential for just understanding the corridor, such as like land use, economic development, pedestrian watershed. They don't really change that much between the 4 options, but they tell a story. And I think that's important to communicate the benefits related to, or just the information that we gain through learning what is the land use economic development in this corridor, what are the pedestrian watersheds in this corridor. But there's differentiators that will be factors like property impacts, safety, traffic, transit impacts. These are things that we can see as differentiators between, when we're trying to narrow it down to one, between the 4 options. Some criteria will become more relevant when comparing back to the Bruce Ventil Trail after establishing that one preferred concept that's going to be on Bruce Ventil, or that's going to be on the White Bear alignment. Station access, socioeconomics are primary examples of things that when we get to that point of comparing to the Bruce Ventil Trail, these are things that are going to become differentiators between those 2 options when we're comparing between the Bruce Ventil Trail and the White Bear Avenue. We are evaluating certain criteria at a segment level and a corridor level. And what I mean by that is that segment level would be where we're separating it and we're trying to understand the evaluation from what's on Maryland, White Bear Avenue to Larpenteur, and then so on in the Maplewood segments. So that's at a segment level. Corridor level is looking at it for the entire route from Maryland all the way up to the endpoint, to the layover facility, or to ending at the Maplewood Mall. So that's what I mean by when I say segment, and that's what I mean by when I say corridor level. Property impact served as a great example at why we would evaluate that at a segment level to understand what's happening on Maryland, what's happening on White Bear. While corridor level consideration would be things like cost and ridership, we want to understand that for the corridor. Each criteria theme is treated equally. And that's, so what we have here is that we're not weighting the criteria. We're not saying that one criteria means more than the other. We're treating them all equally. However, it is crucial to emphasize that each theme allows for discussion about the trade-offs. So when I had all those different themes that was up for evaluation, we're able to now have enough evaluation to say, what are the pros, what are the cons to each one of these? Ultimately, we need to examine each theme to arrive at a preferred concept that the project team will recommend to the CMC for consideration at some point. Incorporating all these themes, agency feedback, public input, all those things are things that we're going to have to take into consideration and then present that to you at a future CMC. Additionally, the last thing to note is that we may have some criteria that we recognize that we need to add as additional measures, because we want to make sure that we're having enough information to differentiate and highlight the differences between the 4 options that we're looking at right now. So there is a chance that we have some things that we may learn that we want to incorporate and add into into the conversation to evaluate. So this is just more of a high level approach that I wanted to share with you all as things that we've been working on. And then eventually we will end up sharing a lot of this content with all of you at a future CMC. That's all I have.
Thank you, Stephen, for taking something that is incredibly complicated and making it easier for us to digest. Did I hear someone asking a question? Probably not. Yes. Okay. We will move on, and we're going to be hearing more and more about this, about the criteria as we go forward. Next item on the agenda is the conceptual engineering layouts and visualizations. And I believe that Sara is taking that section.
Yes, thank you.
And Sarah, if you can leave me just at least 5 minutes at the end to get to next steps.
Yep, I will try to get through this quickly. So we just wanted to kind of give you a flavor of what we have been looking at with these alternatives that we are looking at. First up here would be essentially having transit lanes on the outside of the entire corridor. You can see we have this split up into Maryland Avenue segment. This White Bear Avenue South segment is essentially White Bear Avenue in St. Paul because the right-of-way is much more constrained in St. Paul. So we differentiate between White Bear Avenue in St. Paul and White Bear Avenue in Maplewood. And essentially, you know, this is the same for the entire length of this portion of the corridor for Purple Line. We would have side running transit, and right turning vehicles could use the transit lanes to turn into businesses and at intersections on Maryland, on White Bear Avenue, south of Larpenteur, and then on White Bear Avenue north of Larpenteur, there is a little bit more room in the existing right-of-way where we can add a median. And I think for those of you who know that area, there is a significant portion of it that has a median today. But we would be putting median along the rest of it, and that is primarily a safety thing. If you're taking away 2 lanes of that general traffic, there's going to be less gaps for people to make left turns in and out of businesses and at intersections. So if it's not a signalized intersection, for the most part, it would end up being closed off to making those left turns. So that is in general one of the options. Another option would be basically having that side running transit in St. Paul, and then in Maplewood where the right-of-way widens out a little bit, trying to do a center running transit in that portion. And that those transit lanes could be separated by a median on each side of the transit lanes, or where the right-of-way is narrow, or for other design reasons, we could instead put a median in the middle, and not separate the transit lanes from general traffic with a median, just with paint. The third option that we have changes the design in St. Paul. This would be a transit and right turning vehicle lane on one side, like headed either northbound or southbound. And then when the bus is returning in the other direction, it would be with mixed traffic. And then we could fit in a 2-way turn lane in the center, of the two general purpose lanes. And buses would stop in the lane at the stations. And then the center running in Maplewood would be the same as in the previous option. Go to the last one. Has the same cross section in St. Paul with the transit and right turning vehicles only lane going in one direction, and the bus running in mixed traffic in the opposite direction. And which direction hasn't totally been set yet. This is just kind of representative of showing it in one direction and not the other. And then White Bear Avenue and Maplewood would have transit and right turning vehicle lanes on the outside, like it did in the very first option that I showed, and a median going down the middle. So that was very fast, but now I have a little bit more detailed. Oh, go ahead.
Yanni's got a question, but I'm going to ask if Yanni would hold his question, because I think these next set of graphics will answer the question you have about at the intersections.
Sure.
So this is kind of a zoomed in engineering drawing of the two options on Maryland at Clarence, essentially from Clarence to Phelan. In the top one, you can see the transit and right turning vehicle lanes are kind of faintly hashed out on the outside on both sides of the road. You can see that, we have our proposed stations in yellow here at Clarence. And then it shows, turn lanes, signals. It shows in this area we have a little bit more right of way. We can put a median in between the intersections. It's just kind of a representative drawing of the options. The lower drawing shows that transit lane on the southern side of the roadway, and then buses would be in general traffic. It show this both of these drawings also show like some of the pedestrian improvements. In both cases, pedestrians would only have to cross 2 lanes at a time, and then there's a median, what we call a pedestrian refuge. And then we have some renderings that kind of show this in more of a picture view. This is that area in the existing condition. Maryland is running north-south. Clarence is running east-west. Go to the next. This is showing the bus lane in one direction, the 3-lane roadway plus local access and transit in 1 lane. It is showing the bus lane in all red. Of course, this is conceptual just to really be able to see the differences. We still have to determine where exactly we would have red pavement and where we don't feel like the red is necessary. Things like turn lanes are still being designed, so those turn lane lengths might not be, representative of exactly how the engineering drawing will work out. They're very conceptual, but we just kind of wanted people to be able to see, a turning vehicle into the Dairy Queen at Clarence and Maryland from the bus lane and things like that. And then
we're going to have to get through the rest of this. We did start a few minutes late, but I want to try to adhere to the timeline.
Sure. Craig, should we just do this one and save the others for the next, or try and get through them all?
No, we can send this out to the group as we normally do, and we'll post it. But we've got 2 other locations. Let's finish off with this one, and then we can skip the rest.
Okay, so this is showing the transit and right turning vehicles on both sides of the roadway, and they're shown in red again. And then general traffic is in the center. We also have similar drawings and renderings for 2 other areas. We have one for White Bear Avenue at Arlington to kind of show that that White Bear Avenue in St. Paul layout, and then we have a White Bear Avenue at County Road C. And this one, it's a little more exciting because it shows center running and center running stations and kind of what those stations look like. Yeah, so I think, just take a look at them and let us know if you have any questions.
And I'm sure there will be. That was a lot of information, and I know I've seen it before, and I'm still going, okay, trying to put it all together because there's a lot of different options. And I think that's what's important about all of this is we're trying to figure out, okay, what is going to work best and what makes sense to study further. Because we can't study the world in this, but we can look at these and get questions, get feedback, and move things forward. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Craig so that he can actually tell what the next steps are.
Yeah, and then before pivoting to those next steps, and it is a next step, but pivoting from the work that Sara just ran through real quickly, and in reaction to feedback we got from D2 when we talked to them about a week ago, Yanni's group, we are also trying to figure out the best way to communicate this information so people understand it. And so one of the things we identified through that D2 engagement is we need to create some animations. So what you are seeing here are more still visualizations. So actually short videos from the 3rd person view out the eyes of the pedestrian that's crossing at an unsignalized intersection and utilizing a pedestrian refuge that we're proposing with one of our options as an example. Also came up with trying to understand how that right turning vehicles would access from and to the transit lane. So we'll have a short video on that. So hopefully by the time that this group meets again, we'll be able to share those short animations as well with the public when we do that 5-week public comment period.
Okay.
One quick note, you've seen this graphic before. This is the schedule we've been following for RMS Phase 2. The upper graphic shows the last version you saw, which showed that we were going to come forward with a preferred concept recommendation to this body for action in March. We are not going to be able to do that. You heard about all the work we're doing, and it's taking us a little bit longer to do it, but we're doing it the right way and engaging. Want to make sure we have enough time to engage folks. Our engagement period now happens to be bookended by spring break in Maplewood School District and spring break in St. Paul School District, with open houses occurring in between. So we're having to extend our public comment period by a little bit longer than 30 days in order to avoid those spring breaks when folks might not be around. So we are now planning on coming back in May with a preferred concept after we have the technical evaluation, which will likely be coming to you in your next meeting before we go out for public comment. And then we'll come back with the public's preference over the preferred concept as part of our recommendation to you in May. We are not losing any back end schedule. We're still assuming that we're going to be making a decision on where Purple Line wants to be, Bruce Central Trail Corridor or White Bear Avenue in September. But what you'll see by this lower graphic is we're now going to be coming back with a refreshed Bruce Central Trail Corridor in June rather than in April, and also any discussion about going further north of the North End District in Maplewood, say to Century College directly or to Vadnais Heights. So that is now the new schedule that we're working toward. What that looks like for this body is here's the meetings over the course of the first 9 months of this year. As we've previously noted, we won't typically make a call on a cancellation on a meeting that's already on your calendars until about a week or 2 out, but we believe we'll be canceling the February meeting. We believe we'll be coming with differentiating evaluation results. You heard Stephen talk about differentiating versus all the information we're generating. And so we'll come talk to you about differentiating results between those different design options. Chair Zelli also in the last meeting had made a commitment to, I think, Councilmember Villavicencio's question on transit safety and security. So we will bring our general manager and chief of police to come talk to this group about safety and security and what we're doing about it, and then possibly a post-pandemic transit ridership discussion. April will likely be canceled. As noted before, we'll come back in May with a recommended preferred concept for action by this body. Come back in June with a refreshed Bruce Vento Trail. And when I say refresh, that's really ridership and cost, because it's been a year since we've studied ridership and cost on the Bruce Vento Trail corridor. So we want to be able to compare apples to apples, since we're going to have fresh costs and fresh ridership for White Bear Avenue. Likely canceling July and August to accommodate that public comment period that Liz talked about earlier, that basically seeks input on Bruce Vento Trail versus White Bear Avenue, and then come forward with a staff recommendation on the revised locally preferred alternative. Where does Purple Line want to be in September? So Madam Chair, I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you. Okay, well, I can tell you that, as was pointed out, our next meeting will probably be in March. I do want to point out that our standing committee meeting time is going to be reset as Wednesday afternoon. Actually, it says does not, on my notes here, it says does not work for one of our members. And I should have thought of this before, but the St. Paul City Council meets on Wednesday afternoons. And so we need to come up with a different day. And given that we're looking at probably at March, although February has not been canceled officially yet, but we will make sure that we get everyone's input on when we make that change. Because we certainly want to have the city of St. Paul, and Jay Laura is doing a great job, but I know that Councilmember Yang would really like to be part of this as well. Are there any other comments or questions? Anything to bring up from the other members at this time? Not seeing any hands, not hearing any voices.
I just have my one question, but I'll forward that off to folks outside the meeting.
Okay, thank you, Yanni. Appreciate that.
Yes.
Okay, there being no further business, we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.